Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. I'm your host Faye, and each week I bring you stories of Jewish women who are paving bold new paths. What happens when you're raised in the shadows of addiction and abuse and still choose to become a light for others? This week's guest is Chana Leah Bleznick, who shares her powerful journey and mission to spark honest conversations about mental health, identity, and healing in the Jewish community. Let's dive in. Chana Leah, welcome to the TrailBLAZER pod.
Thank
so
you
much
for
being here.
I'm so excited.
I'm so excited too because I love when I meet my guests on social media because I had a very negative connotation with social media, and I'm like reframing that in my brain now when I meet people like you and then I bring them on the podcast. So it's
so nice.
Moment. Yeah.
Okay, I'm so excited.
Me too. I want to start by asking you who you were as a little kid. Like, what was your upbringing like?
Yeah, so I am from now. I'm Lubavitch, and we live in the heart of Crown Heights. But I was not from growing up. But being Jewish was like the biggest part of our identity as a family. My mom taught Hebrew school. We always went to shul. Like we lit Shabbos candles. Being Jewish was the most important thing to us. But as we'll get into it, I'm an only child. I was born into a family affected by multi-generational addictions. So growing up for me, it looked really, really good and beautiful and curated, but inside it was pretty tumultuous. And I had a lot of various forms of abuse in my early life. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was 15. Wow. But on the outside, it looked absolutely perfect. I was a competitive tennis player. We were really, really involved in our community. We lived in a beautiful house where like it was, you know, like when you have like a friend and like their house is the hub and like everyone always congregates there like before you're going to an event or a school dance or whatever. So that was my house. My mom used to like have everybody's like all my friends' grocery preferences for when she would go to the grocery store. So like everyone had like their milk and like their cereal for when they would come
That's
over.
amazing.
Yeah, some parts of it were like so sweet and wonderful, and a lot of parts of it were very, very dark and stuff that I've had to work through in my adult life and since I've become a mother myself. But yeah, it was exactly what you see in the movies. That was truly how I grew up. I had the same friends from like 7 to in my 20s. I went to prom. I was the president of my student government. I was the president of an international Jewish youth organization. I traveled a lot for that. I gave big speeches. I won a lot of scholarships to college for that. Like it was really idealistic. But you know, brewing under the surface was the effects of addiction and all of the repercussions of the trauma and the abuse that I suffered.
All of that going on. It also sounds like you type A personality, but you're also very creative. I see that on your social, so it's an interesting combination.
Yeah.
Like, if you had to explain your personality as, like, let's say from 7 to 15, how would you explain it?
Definitely super outgoing, the leader of everything, the one who wasn't afraid to like get up in front of the room and lead anything. I was the summer camp director in my community. Like I was a camp counselor, like the head of the Maccabia team. You know, I was super loud and very outgoing and like boisterous. It was like the age of like iChat and AIM and like Skype, you know, Facebook like had barely started existing. So we were like taking silly selfies at the mall. It was super pretty looking on the outside, and I was very outgoing and like the leader. As I've done like my work, you know, like going through the 12 steps and whatever, I realized that I was seeking my validation from all of those positions and things that I would be doing and things that I would be leading. Because like you said, I am super type A and I am maybe to an extreme.
I get that.
Yeah. So I definitely sought validation outside of my home in that way. Like, you know, if I was the president of things and I was on the student government and I was the one giving the speeches and I was on the tennis team and all of those things, I was getting praise. So I think that's where that stemmed from, but it is also just like innately
It's always a combination, I feel
like. Part like defense mechanism and part just like that's just who I am.
Yeah. So speaking of defense mechanism, and I might be talking like from personal experience, sometimes when so much is going on at home, you're overcompensating with certain things.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering if it's not only like a validation thing, but were you kind of doing that to cover up what was happening? Like to
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think especially as a kid, you don't ever want to be like other or different. And you don't want anyone to like be in on your, secret that, home is not what their homes look like. Cause I would be in their homes and like they would have family dinner, they would be going on family vacations, or, they would be doing those things that a family structure that isn't plagued by addiction and mental illness and, all of those things does. And that wasn't what was happening in my home when they would be at my house. So yeah, it was definitely a cover up because I wanted to be accepted and liked and part of, and not be like, ooh, like what's happening there, Like I remember putting a lot of emphasis, like in middle school, everyone was wearing Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirts, and I was desperate to have them because all my friends wore them because their parents were super wealthy, and my mom was like, I am not buying you that. So I used to babysit every opportunity I had to buy these Abercrombie and Fitch shirts with like this huge moose on the middle because I just wanted to be like everyone else. I so wasn't like everyone else in so many other ways. So I wore the Abercrombie and Fitch t-shirts, and I'm still triggered by like the smell of the cologne at that store.
It's amazing how it's like everyone goes through it in their own way, but the themes are so similar. Like everyone wants to fit in, especially at that age. It's so traumatizing to be an outsider, right? So I feel like that makes so much sense.
So now I have 3 kids. My oldest is 6. If he ever wants the coolest thing, I will mortgage my house. I don't care. I am getting it for him because I have such trauma. It was so much deeper. It was social currency. It was... Yeah, it was so much deeper. And it's funny, like now I speak to her and I have a very close relationship, and I'll sometimes say like, and you never bought me an Abercrombie & Fitch. So
that's amazing. That's really funny.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you were like 17, 18 and you were going to college, like what did you envision your career to look like?
So it's funny. I'm outing my mom again. We just had this conversation. So I obviously I just started, but 6 weeks ago, I took my Instagram from private. That was 1,000 followers, just my friends and family, to public. And now I'm like about to hit 3,000 in 6 weeks, which Baruch Hashem has been an amazing, amazing journey. But when I was going to college, I either wanted to be an esthetician and like do facials and that route, or I wanted to be a photographer. And my parents, being the very, very straight-laced, practical Republicans that they are, said, neither of those careers are acceptable. They are not recession-proof, and you are not going to college for that. So I ended up entering college with a double major in special and elementary education, with a minor in religious studies, like focused on Jewish studies. And I ended up graduating like early with honors, and I switched my focus a little bit to disability advocacy. That wasn't like the original dream, but it became the dream.
Yeah. And I don't want to talk about this too much because there's so much I want to focus on. But I know you kind of work in that space now, right?
Yes. I'm leaving this weekend for a week-long national convention in Washington, D.C. We're going to march to the Capitol and meet with legislators on Capitol Hill about disability rights. So yeah, it's funny, like almost nobody uses their degree now. It's like kind of arbitrary. And it happens to be that my husband and I both like specifically exactly use our college degrees. But yeah, so I still work in legal advocacy full time for the city of New York, and I represent disabled New Yorkers in writing pieces of legislation and in housing court, working on transportation issues. So a lot of like the legal aspects of disability accessibility in New York City.
It's amazing. I wanted to bring that up because I found that last second, because on your social you talk a lot about the trauma and the mental illness and showing up as your true self and addiction, and that itself is already so multifaceted. And then this came up. I'm like, this woman is like, she's a 3-6. She got everything. I just found it so cool because I think sometimes we feel like we need to fit into this box, like present ourselves a certain way. This is what we do. And personally, I struggled with this for a long time because I have so many different interests and passions. Yeah. And everyone's always like, how do these connect? And at some point I'm just like, they don't.
But they do inside of you.
Inside of me. Beautiful. Right. But there's no like like linear path between them where somebody else can understand it, except for like this is me, and like
But I think that makes people so cool.
It does.
Yeah, I love learning about those pieces. Like, and my friends always say to me, actually, I was having a conversation like at 3:00 in the morning with a girlfriend of mine.
Oh my gosh.
She's like, I don't understand how you are doing it all, how you're working out, how you're working full time, how you're doing content, how you have all these kids. Like, I don't understand. And I think, first of all, it's not something that like you have to aspire to always be busy. And I'm not always busy. Like, something to know about me is even though I'm doing all of that, I wake up at 7:15 and I'm in bed by 6:00 at night. So I do it all in like a very small window of like 10-hour time. And I just am like a really, really, really good multitasker. But then I have to give myself grace that like if stuff doesn't get done, then it rolls over to my next to-do list. And I was also talking about this on my social media recently, that I also have a lot of help. Not a lot of help, but my husband is extremely involved in my kid's life. And I'm an only child and so is he. So our parents, even though they don't live in the same town as us, really are invested. And so I call and I'm like, I need shoes. Like this morning, his toe poked out of his shoe. They don't fit. Like I don't have time to run to the store. My mother-in-law or my mom will just ship it on Amazon. It comes the next day. So I also have help, and I also ask for help a lot.
Oh, that's such an important point.
Thank God I have, a little village that I've created for myself.
That's really important because sometimes we feel like we have to do it all ourselves, and like you can't ask for help, and nobody does it themselves. It's not possible.
You can't.
You can't.
And I'm probably not a perfect mom. I'm definitely not a perfect wife. I'm definitely not a perfect daughter or a friend, but I definitely try. And where I fall short, I could just be like, hey, I'm so stressed out right now and I'm so overwhelmed. We're moving across the country in 3 weeks. Behind my computer where you can't see are boxes everywhere. Sometimes you just have to just show up and be authentic and be like, I just can't do this, but I love you. I love you.
Yes, exactly. Also, like, tell me if you're like this as well, because I'm also a very typey personality. The busier I am, the more I can get done. Like,
so my replicant in college, who I became firm with, said, if you need something done, ask a busy person. And that's kind of true. It's like, I always feel like a body in motion stays in motion. So like once I've gotten the kids on the bus and I've vacuumed and I've washed the floors and I've washed all the bottles, I've taken content in this dress. Now I'm recording a podcast with you. I have 3 work calls later. I have to go to Target. I have to pick up my kids. Like once I have to work out, once my body is in motion, I'm going until 6:00 when I get into my bed.
I love it. Okay, I can so relate to that.
Yeah.
It's a real thing. So how I want to go through your story is I'm stealing basically your content from Instagram.
Yeah.
Your post where
Please.
You like were saying, why am I here? What's your why, right? Why should you follow me? What am I doing here? Why did I go from private to public? The real questions. And you broke it down into basically 3 missions and purpose that you see in yourself. And I want to start.
Well, I love what you were just saying about how do all of these interests connect. Mm-hmm. And I think that like the video you're describing on my page is exactly what I was trying to impart to people. It's like, I want to show I live in a curvier body. I 3 years ago, I lost 75 pounds, and this is like my weight now that I'm comfortable with, but like, I'm still a size, 14. I still have like major curves. So even when I'm not my thinnest, but even when I'm at my healthiest and I'm working out every day, I'm still super curvy, but I'm very into fashion and I really love dressing nicely and putting myself together and being like very well groomed. And I always wanted to order from these Jewish brands, but I'm like, there is no way that these stores fit me. Like, there's just no way, because a Jewish brand is always like cut really small. I wanted to look like everyone else, especially when I started dressing sneas and when I became frum. So in the last like 2 or 3 years, I've kind of dabbled with these brands, and I went and I did a fitting with the frock because I wanted them to expand to plus size, and they took all my measurements and they made me a custom dress. And I just like have dabbled in and out of being in contact with these brands. And then in May, Sulip, who was like my first big deal, they gave me my break. I owe so much to them, and I'm so eternally grateful for them for giving this to me. Said, hey, we want you to be our social media ambassador. We don't do sales, but we'll give you a special code. We're going to give you these clothes because I want them to be shown on your body. And so that was like my original mission of, I really want people who don't live in a body that looks like a size 2. And I want women who, like, I've had 1 C-section and then 2 other births afterwards. So my body also, wears the scars.
Like a real body.
Yeah. My body wears the scars of having, 3 kids and nursing them. And and birthing them and all the things that come along with that. It looks like I've lost 75 pounds. Like I'm saying, my body has fluctuated a lot. So that was my like inception of why I was doing this. Cause I was like, this is my dream. I love clothes.
Wow.
But then I was like, no. It has to be more than that. Like this can't just be clothes because I'm so much more than that. And I feel like it would be inauthentic to not share that. So with my husband's, blessing in December, I started doing speaking events like publicly, but not recorded. So no one was recording what I was saying. And I was speaking about growing up in addiction and all the work that I ended up having to do on myself and how that translated into my marriage and being a mother. And I'm very involved in 12-step recovery. And I wanted that to be part of my page too, because I felt like it wouldn't, if I was doing something like performative, there's no way that this would grow.
Right.
And if I wasn't able to show up as my full whole self, it would feel like I was pigeonholing myself and I knew that I would get burnt out. But if I was able to talk about, like you said, like all these weird facets of my personality that like I'm in 12-step recovery. I really like fashion. I've lost 75 pounds. I've never missed an episode of the Kardashians. Like if I could talk about like all of these things, I've been watching The Real Housewives since I was 5. Like if I could talk about all the things that I am, I felt like, okay, either Hashem is going to bless this or block it, but I want to show up fully as me so that I know I gave it like, the old college try.
Yeah. I love that you knew this almost like proactively. Sometimes it's like it takes us to get stuck and like be pigeonholed by other people for us to realize it. And you realized this before you even started, which is pretty amazing.
Well, because I think in my real life, I was pigeonholed for the last, I would say 10 years. 10 years ago, I moved to Crown Heights. I moved into the seminary dorm, and I was pigeonholed also by myself. My grandmother, who I lovingly refer to as my Safta, was a writer. She's passed away now, but I was recently reading her writings because I keep thinking that like I'm seeing her hand in all of this happening for me. And she writes a passage that she emailed me many years ago about how she installed a spiritual dimmer switch on herself to like make other people comfortable because she was like an extremely dynamic, intense, brilliant, spiritual, amazing woman, but like in the day and age and in her family and the family she married into and my grandfather, that wasn't like allowed, like just sit and be. So she talks about that she installed a spiritual dimmer switch and she didn't allow herself to show up fully in her life, and she never did. And then she writes at the bottom of the email, but I hope to uninstall my spiritual dimmer switch. After all, I was the one who installed it. And I have good. Yeah, isn't that beautiful? So I've really been taking that and thinking like, am I dimming myself right now? And my whole entire life, I've been told I'm too much. I'm too loud. I'm too, like anything I am, I'm too much. And I was just told that my whole entire life. And I just don't want to subscribe to that anymore because I am a lot, but I'm also like a crazy introvert and pretty quiet, and I'm both. I'm definitely both. Yeah. The people who know me best know that like I just want to lay in my bed and not speak to anybody. I'm super introverted, like super. Yeah, so that's like another dichotomy. But yeah, I've just been told my whole life that I'm too much. But like I'm over that. I turned 30 and I'm over it.
I love it. But you know what also is amazing about that? Because if someone comes onto your page, they can relate to something there.
Yeah, I hope so.
Because there's so much to you. Yeah. It's not like, oh, you need to be interested in Tania's fashion to follow you. Or you need to be, So it opens the door for so many more people to connect with you.
So when I shared about recently, I did like a post because obviously I was watching reality TV and the person shared about a trauma that they had. And I was like, I have that and it's so not talked about. So I called my best friend first and I was like, can I add this to my list of stuff that I talk about? Like, is this crazy? She's like, no, this is your authentic experience. Exactly. So I'm trying to like toe the line of like, I don't have every trauma. I really don't. But I have like a lot, but I'm trying to talk about it in a way that's hopeful, that like I really have come to the other side of so much of my stuff. And even if I haven't come to the other side of it, like I have tools in my toolbox now to manage it better. I hope people can find something they relate to. And at the very least, they could just use my code CL10 almost anywhere now. And that's good enough for me.
Yeah. I have to say the posts you're doing are not like self-pity and like victimizing yourself at all. So
I
you're
appreciate
doing a
that.
great job with saying like, I want to raise awareness about this issue. If you're
Yeah.
dealing with this, you're not crazy. Here's
Yeah.
here's my tool, It's very pragmatic. So
Yeah.
I think you're okay. You're doing a good job.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'm not really that type. I'm not like a wallower, and I don't need to like talk about a problem just to talk about it. I'm very action based, which there is a flip side of that, of like I'm not always the most patient with people who would maybe need to, I should say not people. I'm not always the most patient wife because I'm very action based, and my spouse is sometimes a little bit just like wanting to process.
Yeah.
So there is like a negative to that I am action based, and I want to find a solution, and I want to find community, and I want to discuss it and break the stigma.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that too. Like, even though it is a positive, I'm also working on letting people in my life feel their stuff for however long they need to feel it. In Alanon, we say the first step is awareness, the second is acceptance, and the third is action. So I'm aware.
Yeah. Good start. So let's talk a little bit about your journey. You became from, I'm guessing, in college. You mentioned something about that. But like, how did that happen?
So like I said, I grew up in a family that was super Jewish. Like Judaism was our biggest identity over anything. My grandmother writes a book about her experience and her best friend being Hashem. When she passed away, people at her funeral spoke that she was Lamed Vav, like a hidden tzaddik. Like I grew up in a family that was incredibly connected to their higher power and to Hashem, spoke out loud to him constantly. That's like how I am with my kids now. Like my 6-year-old, if we're driving, I'll be like, okay, ask Hashem for a parking spot for mommy. Like just like always incorporating Hashem into every conversation and every situation. So that's how I grew up, is like very connected to God. Not in the sense of sheitel, sneas, Shabbos, kosher, but in the sense of like, Hashem is for the good, and Hashem loves you, and like it's important to have a relationship with Hashem, and nothing can happen without him. So when I became from it was like kind of a manifestation of like a lot of stuff in my life had blown up. I had a long-term boyfriend that like we thought we were going to be together forever and get married, which I'm sure a lot of teenagers feel that way, but we had been together a long time. Our families were friends, and like we broke up, and something happened in college, and I had like an assault, and just like a lot of stuff in my life blew up kind of in like a concentrated amount of time. And it was like hashgacha pratis that then I ended up meeting my Chabad on campus rabbi in Rebbitzin, totally fell in love with them. Wow. And I thought to myself, if I've been trying it for this long without Hashem, or with Hashem, but not in a way that like I felt like I could manifest that outwardly, because we were like going to frat parties and dancing and drinking and like, smoking and doing all this. Yeah, completely. I was like, you know what? Let me try it this time with God and just see what happens. And it just clicked. And I love community, and I love my relationship with Hashem. And it just felt like a really natural progression for me. Obviously, like not hanging out with boys and dressing differently was a journey for me. But I was pretty ready at that point to turn my will over to my higher power and to live outwardly in a way that reflected how I really felt on the inside.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did your parents react to it?
Okay, so I'm an only child.
Right.
And when I speak about my parents, I refer to my mom and my stepdad. My stepdad came into my life when I was 15. So my stepdad is the child of Holocaust survivors. His parents hid in the woods in Poland during the war. Eventually made it to a DP camp in Germany. He was one of the first babies born in the newly founded state of Israel. So he's very connected to his Judaism in that way. He ended up coming to America as a kid. But my mom worked for the Chabad house for like 20 years. She had a key to the building. My mom says like she's the only person who wears pants who has a key to the Chabad house. So like my parents were super familiar with Chabad and being from, and people would come up to my mom and be like, I am so sorry about your daughter. Oh my God. And my mom would be like, because she loves God. Like she's not doing drugs. She's not like, in rehab. So my parents were so good with it. Like I remember when I wanted to start dressing sneas, my mom gave me like a bunch of money to get new clothes. Like, and I'm also an only child. So I know there's so many Baal Teshuvah stories where their parents like disown them. And my friends had that. Like I've seen it firsthand where like parents don't come to their children's weddings and like stuff gets crazy. But I'm also the only game in town. So like if I wanted to be from and they have one kid, this is kind of
That's what
the
they got.
situation. Yeah, like now the house is kosher. Like this is the situation. So they were
Wow.
really good with it.
Okay, that's so special.
Yeah, super special. And I have kids now, and like both my parents and my in-laws have kosher homes for us to eat in. They both, my mother-in-law and my mom, have like a full tznius wardrobe that they wear when they're with our kids. Like they're so
It's
good
amazing.
with it. Yeah, we're super, super, super blessed. So that's like one trauma I don't have, which is good.
Yeah, I find it interesting when I talk to like anyone that grew up in a Jewish community, like people who become more from and people who become less from, or
Yeah.
you know, in some way. There's so much that overlaps there, even though it's just so interesting that it comes down to like what the parents are used to and what they
Yeah.
were like envisioning for their child,
Yeah.
no matter what, you know, the details are.
The community literally was horrified. Like, asked my mom if she wanted to join support groups. Like, my mom's like, no, I'm good. And my mom always used to say to people, like, people who would stop her on the street, she would be like, we know each other because we go to shul together. Like, why is this bad?
It's
Like, we
very
only had
interesting.
Jewish friends. Like, we really were so Jewish, but people were and still are horrified
They
that
couldn't
I'm
believe like
when I had my first baby was born like 9 months to the day from my wedding.
Wow.
People sent my mom the craziest messages, like, you know, her husband, and people are just not happy about it.
It's you're keeping up with the Kardashians.
Right, exactly. Oh my God, keeping up with me. But yeah, no, so I just think that, like what my mom said, like, because she has a relationship with God, like, we're good.
Yeah, like
It's fine.
Nabach, right?
Yeah, right? It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, so the second thing that you are obviously very passionate about is speaking up about growing up with addiction and
Yeah.
that kind of trauma. Can you share whatever you're comfortable with? Like, just can you give us a little bit of like a brief of what that looked like in your life?
Yeah, so I'll share like a very beginning story, like in my inception, and then I'll go a little bit further up until they get divorced. So like the two major stories are my mom. She's the youngest of three, and she grew up, and her dad was an extreme abuser, and my mom ended up being raised in foster care. She eventually reconnected with her parents before I was born, but just like a lot of generational trauma and pain and abuse there that was dealt with, but also swept under the rug in so many instances for the sake of, you know, keeping the family together. Yeah. So my grandmother joined Alanon because of my grandfather's addictions in the 80s. My mom and her siblings ended up joining in the 90s. Wow. It was there that my mom met my biological dad, who was also in a form of 12-step recovery. So she figured this is going to be perfect because I'm marrying someone who understands the complexities of multi-generational addiction and is working their own 12-step program and has a relationship with a higher power, a nice Jewish boy. Like this is going to be great. So my parents got married, and 2 years later, they decided to have me. When my mom got pregnant with me, almost immediately before her first trimester was over, she was in full organ failure, in a coma, and fed intravenously. And the story goes, it's actually coming up. We call it Celebrate Life Day, and it's August 4th. It's like my second birthday. The doctors in the hospital woke her up from the coma and said to her, Esther, that's my mom's name, we have to end this pregnancy because you're going to die. This baby is killing you. And we can't perform the abortion here because this is a Catholic hospital. We need to airlift you to the closest hospital that can perform this abortion because you are not going to make it. And my mom, with her infinite wisdom and connection to her higher power, said to the doctors, you have to give me all night. And if I can lift my head off the pillow in the morning, that is Hashem's way of telling me this baby has to be born. So she prayed all night, and the next morning she had the strength to lift her head off the pillow. She told the doctors that no one in my family meets Hashem alone. It's either both of us or none of us. And I'm going to try to have this baby. So a normal gestation that you have a baby, like I have a baby at 42 weeks because I'm always overdue. But a normal gestation is like between 36 and 42 weeks. That's when you have a baby. I was born at 28 weeks and 4 days. They said I would never walk, never talk, you know, basically be reduced to a vegetable. The first words that the doctor said when I was born is baby does not appear to be blind. I lived in the neonatal intensive care unit. My mom says my first visitor at the hospital was Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance. Because when any claim gets to be over like $5 million, they do an in-person audit to make sure it's not
That's
insurance
hilarious.
fraud. Because they're like, how can this be so
what is
expensive?
this?
What is happening here? And during that time, my biological dad relapsed during the pregnancy and all of that, because it was a very, very, very stressful time. The social worker in the hospital told my mom not to make any big decisions for 6 months. Maybe things will get better. I always think about that woman and think that she probably didn't understand the effects of addiction and going home to that. But my mom really didn't have support from her parents. And so she went home to my dad. And she left a few times in my life. At one point, we moved to Chicago when I was a little girl. Long story short, we eventually went back. When I was 13 years old, things were kind of coming to a head of insane dysfunction, addiction and abuse, and like just mental warfare and torture. We went on a cruise because, like I said, everything looked really beautiful and we wanted to, like, you know, post pictures on Facebook, and we were going to be like a normal, happy family. And on a cruise, you sit communally for meals. Like, you get assigned a table, and then like someone else from the boat is sitting at the same table because they want you to like meet people on the boat. So we go on this cruise. I was like a 12 or 13-year-old little girl, and I'm sitting with my mom and my dad and like this other family. They didn't have kids. They were like an older couple with like another couple. And things went so crazy during that meal that afterwards the couple ended up finding me and my mom on the boat and giving my mom a number for a domestic violence shelter and telling her that she had to get help for her and her little girl, and she had to get out. It took another about 18 months or 2 years for my mom to leave fully, finally. She was, you know, completely financially dependent on my father, who was making a very good living, and she was able to get a job, and her and I moved down, and she bought a condo, and so things kind of turned around when I was 15, and I've actually been no contact with my father since then. So it's almost 16 years of no contact. Well, I guess it's 15 years like this month, really, maybe 16. I have to do the math. But yeah, so things were like really very, very, very tumultuous. Because I'm an only child, I also didn't have any siblings to say like, oh my gosh, isn't this crazy? So it was really my mom and I against the world. Like, my parents didn't sleep in the same bedroom. My mom and I slept in the same bedroom every night. Like, everywhere I went, she went. Everywhere she went, I went. We were like very, very attached. My maiden last name, which I'm not going to say, starts with a G. So people used to call us like the Gilmore Girls. Like, we were just always together. And people thought that my dad was dead. Like, no one ever saw him. When he would show up once a year to something and make a scene, people didn't even realize who that was. But it was very, 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 very embarrassing and super shameful. But yeah, growing up was very hard until my mom left. And having your parents get divorced at 15 is rough. I mean, it was the best thing that ever happened. And my mom met my stepdad very shortly after that, who's like the love of our lives, truly. But it was really hard. It was very, very hard, because being 15 in a perfect family is hard.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I
I was gonna say that in the beginning, like 15 is probably like the most awkward age to have something happen
Totally.
in your family.
Totally.
Yeah.
And I was like a few months away from getting my license, so I didn't have any independence yet. I still had to be driven everywhere. Like, it was just like, then
this
I was living
weird like limbo.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
And I wanted to just like be with my friends, and it was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard.
So like my instinct is to say I'm so sorry, but I feel like you're not the kind of person that's like, I don't need your sorry. You're
No.
like, you know, you're sharing this to
Yeah.
you know, raise awareness. So
I also hate when people, not that I hate it, but I did another podcast with someone who's also in addiction and healing, and he and I were talking about that when he went public with his story, and people were like, you are so brave. It's like, no, I'm not so brave. I was in so much pain that I just need to share for me not to be alone, and I don't ever want anyone to feel what I felt. It's like, it's not that I'm brave. It's just that, like, this is life.
But I think it's special because I think a lot of us we carry shame about those things, and we're too
of course.
So it is brave for sharing. I believe that. I hear what you're saying, but I believe brave. What can you explain what Alanon is for anyone that doesn't know?
Yeah, so Alanon, so there's like Alcoholics Anonymous, which is like for alcoholics. There's Overeaters Anonymous for if like you have a food addiction. There's Gambling Anonymous, Sex Anonymous. There's everything with an anonymous at the end. Anything you could be addicted to, you can go to a meeting. Yeah. So Alanon is the flip side of that, which is I personally am not an addict. I'm not addicted to drugs, alcohol, sex, money, rage, gambling, any of those things. But a loved one in my life, a friend or family member, is. So it's for the family members of the people who are addicted. I don't have an addiction to a substance, but I am profoundly affected by the dysfunction and the disease of addiction in my life. So it's a 12-step program for the people whose loved ones are addicts.
Yeah. The only reason I know what it is because I watched the show Mom. Have you watched it?
No.
It's a sitcom, but it's amazing. It's like 8 seasons. You should check it out.
I love it. Okay.
Mom and daughter who are both raging alcoholics and, drug addicts, and then they go through the 12-step, and Alanon is for their spouse, whatever. It's
I love
amazing. That. Yeah. So an interesting thing that you brought up in that video, and I think it connects. You're also about tshuva. It's like such an interesting topic. You were saying that it's really important for you to share it about the frum community because you had such misconceptions that like if you're frum, you're perfect. Can you explain to me what you were thinking about that and like why you think that is?
So when I became frum, it was like Tati comes home from shul on Shabbos and loves mommy, and they never ever fight, and they never raise their voice at each other, and the children are perfect, and they sit perfectly still, and every little child gives a Devar Torah, and everyone is perfect. Because, unfortunately, we as a society do perpetuate that idea. We want our kids to get into the good yeshiva. We want our family to have good shidduchim. We don't want anyone to know anything because then maybe they're not going to get into seminary. So, like, there is real truth to that idea of that, like, everybody's perfect. And also people don't ever want to share stuff about them because it's just, when you're living in a small community where everybody's connected, you don't want to be like that weird freak family that your kids can't have play dates or, no one wants to come to you for Shabbos. So when I became frum, I figured, okay, no one has any problems. Then when I was living in the community, I realized that is so far from the truth. And people here are so removed from God, even more so than non-religious people in the real world. And there are so many problems here. And the problem is no one is talking about them. At least in the real world, you could go to an AA meeting. Here, people are terrified that their kids are going to get kicked out of yeshiva. They're terrified their kids aren't going to get a shidduch. Like the fear that we live with in the community is real. So when I started really attending Alanon in May of 2022, once my life had hit a real true rock bottom and I knew I needed to heal myself for my children and for my marriage and for all my future generations, I met so many frum women who became my best friends.
Really?
Yes. Like we have a chat of 75 of us and it's going 24/7. Like they're my best friends.
Wow.
But a lot of them still live. A lot of us are like have outed ourselves and we speak at events and we run organizations and we take it public. But I would say 99% don't. But I walk into any meeting in Brooklyn and there's men with beards and payas and tzitzis, and there's women with shaitels and, Satmar women and Babav women and Hasidish women and modern Orthodox women and Lubavitch women. And there's every walk of life that you could possibly imagine who's going through this addiction, and they're so alone. And if I would have seen a woman, not that looked like me, but that I could have related to, that was a young mom, that was a working person, that had, a quote unquote semi-functional life, or like, was a Shabbos host and had like a normal life, but also was sharing that life isn't perfect and it's not all about what my kugel recipe is, but that, I'm living with some real deep effects and wounds from my trauma and I'm acting out because of it. It would have changed my life. I would have felt not as alone, and it would have changed the trajectory of the beginning of my marriage for sure. But when I got married, everyone was saying how perfect their shidduch was and how perfect their kugel recipe is, and their challah turned out great, and no one was saying the real stuff. And it was so painful to me because I've been so successful in my life and I couldn't figure out why I was failing at this and no one else was. But I realized that's not the case at all. Everyone was freaking out. But no one in seminary, we were so taught, especially as Baal Teshuvah, was like, you never ever talk about mikvah. You never talk about your husband. And when I became friends with actually FFB girls, and they would be like, oh, I have mikvah night tonight. When it was like less, when you're Baal Teshuvah, like you just want to fit in, And so once I was able to let the air out of the balloon a little bit, I realized like, oh, people, this is real. And I think I have to take this upon myself to talk about it.
I love that you did, because you're so right. It's exactly why I started this podcast.
I got married and I had best friends and I had very close relationships with them, and they knew everything about my parents and I knew their parents, and we were really, really friends. But it was always like, oh, my husband came home from work and I had the table set, and I'm thinking like, my husband came home from work and we had a huge fight. But you couldn't say, I had no one to say that to, not a human being on earth. The loneliness of that, compounded with the shame of that, because I figured I was the only one, compounded with my trauma that I hadn't dealt with, created such craziness in my life.
Yeah.
Because
I
for
can
you not to be
imagine.
able to say
Yeah.
anything to anyone other than, where did you get your shades cut? Like you're going crazy.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
yeah, that was really my experience in the frum community. And I think we do Baal Teshuvah a huge disservice by not telling them that life is real.
Yeah.
Abuse is real. Sexual abuse in the community is real. Addiction is real. Domestic violence is real. Because the Baal Teshuvahs who come and sit at my Shabbos table have no clue that's what's going on.
It makes me so sad.
Yeah,
Like,
me
to
too.
think about yeah. So this like really flows into the next topic that you're talking about, which is the idea that we can't do it alone, and we touched
Yeah.
on it a little bit. But when you found out that this is not real, this illusion is that's all it is, it's an illusion.
Yeah.
And then finding a community and finding people that understand you and that support, you're saying you show up and there's 75 women on your chat.
Yeah.
Talk to me about why community is so important. And I want to quote one thing that you said, which
Yeah,
is,
go for
you
it.
can't compete with me because I want you to win too. And I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with that. By the way, you have the best one-liners ever.
Thank
Like,
you.
I have so many written down here. You're so good at that. So how has that like shifted your relationship with others and yourself?
So in Alanon, there's a principle that says, we will love you until you learn to love yourself. And when I walked into the rooms of my meeting and I cried hysterically for 6 months, there were women and men, but there were women there who loved me enough until I was able to love myself. And that changed my life.
Wow.
To be able to say to another person the real stuff of what was going on behind closed doors in my marriage and in my heart and in my soul, and what had gone on behind closed doors when I was 5 and 10 and 15. And for someone to look across the table and say to me, I love you and you're worthy and I see you. The pieces of my soul were put back together by that witnessing of love. Because when you're talking to your mashpia, sometimes there's judgment or there's criticism, and or there's, you should do X, Y, and Z to feel better about this. But when I was able to find a community of 12-step women to just hold me and love me and allow me to move through that, it was life-changing, because the ability to say things out loud to someone else frees you from your shame, and it heals you when the person is not like shocked, horrified, stunned. Like I sponsor women in Alanon, right?
Oh.
So women will tell me things that they've done in their past that they're so ashamed of, and I'm like, I've done way worse. Like when you're able to say that and be real with someone, and then they're like, oh,
right. Yeah. It changes
like,
everything.
Right. Or when you see someone who's beautiful and put together, and then you say something to them and they're like, honey, I've done it 5 times. It takes away that stigma and that shame. So I actually put something on my Instagram last night. Like, I put an unpopular opinion. Therapy doesn't work. You cannot heal without a community, like a communal experience. And I went to a really amazing healing retreat once, and the woman only does group work because she says, hurting didn't happen alone, and neither can healing. You cannot heal in a vacuum. You could read every self-help book over every Shabbos for the rest of your life. And unless you have someone who loves you and can reflect it back to you, and who challenges you and can laugh with you and cry with you and come to your simchas and invite you for Shabbos and truly see who you are and accept you, and then you can accept yourself, I don't believe healing can happen. I don't believe healing can happen on a one-on-one in a therapist's office. And I'm not against therapy, like, at all. But I do not believe it is a conduit to any real healing, because you need the community. We are not meant to be alone.
Something else that you said is, it's not the suffering Olympics. Again, one of your one-liners.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So when I shared recently on my page about that I suffer from perinatal suicidal ideation when I'm pregnant, and like up until about 9 months postpartum, each time I've had 3 kids, like I've tested the theory 3 times. It's what happens to me. I know it now. My husband knows it now. My mother knows it now. Like, we got it. And I, like I shared earlier with you, is like, I didn't know if I wanted to share that, because I am so sensitive to the idea of infertility, especially in the frum community where life really revolves around families. So I never, like when I'm pregnant, I never put a picture of myself pregnant on social media. I've never posted a pregnancy announcement. I only
Wow.
post once the baby is born, like any photo of me, like my stomach is covered, or I just don't post it at all. So I always was hesitant to share about that because someone who is dealing with, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years of infertility, and I have friends in that position who, have done 10, 15 rounds of IVF and still have no children. And that is so deeply painful to me for them. I would never want to share that, like, oh, I am pregnant and I get pregnant the first time every time I try in one cycle, and I have to use birth control because I don't want more kids, but I'm suicidal when I'm pregnant. Because that person would do anything to be in my position. Like that person with infertility would happily be suicidal for 18 months because that would mean they have a healthy baby. So when I decided to share, I realized it is not the suffering Olympics. And just because you are suffering and you have pain in a way that I don't, doesn't take it away from you. And it also doesn't take it away from me. But I got so many messages back when I shared about that women did not share their suicidal ideations or their severe prenatal depression with their friends or family because their friends and family were dealing with infertility.
Wow.
So they suffered alone because, like I said, like you don't want to say to someone, oh, I'm so pregnant and I'm so sad. But it's real that, like,
It's
I'm
not
thinking
that.
about, right.
It's not
No,
like you're
I
saying,
know.
yeah. But I'm grateful you shared it because my mother works with this organization that helps women with postpartum depression and stuff.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I was not aware that like there's a pregnancy thing
Yeah.
component here.
Yeah.
How can I'm 29, I don't have kids yet. How can I not know about that? You know what I'm saying? Like that's
Well,
scary
people
to
don't
me.
talk about it because, like I'm saying, having a baby, even in the not from world, infertility is a big thing. And it's really talked about in the last, 5 or 10 years. People are really coming around to the idea of being very sensitive to other people who are dealing with infertility. And I think that trumps me feeling like I want to kill myself when I get pregnant every day for,
Does
9
it?
months.
I don't think it does. Because
I
it's
know,
not
but that was my,
yeah.
thought.
Because it's not sad. Suicidal ideations is not sadness. It's a whole different thing. It's
Yeah.
not like you're saying I'm sad to be pregnant.
No, and I appreciate you saying that because the way I describe it to my husband and my mother, who are my biggest support, because like I said before, I shared about it publicly. I don't tell anybody. I barely even tell my doctor because I don't want to be sent to a psych ward. That's not what I need, and I don't need my kids taken away from me. And I don't need to be 5150. And I'm not going to kill myself. But it's like I'm in this body, and it feels like extra, like it's coming from somewhere else. Like it's so not me, and it's a very clear like shift of like, this is me as a self, and these suicidal feelings are so external, and no medication I've tried, no therapy, no amount of 12-step, no amount of working out, no anything changes those thoughts.
It's the hormones, right?
It's hormonal. It's happened to me 3 times. Like you can go on my page and see the whole video about it. I made like
it's a great video.
Thank you. If you want to know more, you could watch that video. But when Jen shared it on this Hulu episode, I was like, oh my gosh, like, yes,
Finally.
yes, like I have the same exact thing.
It's crazy because like, women get diabetes when they're pregnant. It's like, why is that a normal thing to talk about? It happens only when they're pregnant. They give birth, it's gone.
Correct.
But something that is just a little bit more mental, that's not okay. Like,
but it's terrifying because I don't want my kids taken, my existing kids. I don't want my kids taken away from me. Yeah. I don't want to be held into a mental institution. Those are real things that happen when you say I'm suicidal.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't play one on TV. I'm not a doctor in any way. For me, my suicidal ideation, and for a lot of the women that messaged me that they related, there's no plan ever. Like it's not like I have a plan to die. It's just like this constant invasive message of you should kill yourself, you should kill yourself, you should kill yourself, you should kill yourself. But it's not like there. Yeah, it never goes away. But it's not like, oh, I'm gonna swerve my car or like I'm gonna. It's never like a plan. It's just like this really dark, heavy thought. And like I said in my video, it's my symptom that I get before it even shows up on a pregnancy test. Wow. Like I know that I'm pregnant now 3 times. Like I've done it 3 times
because of that.
Yeah.
Felt so fascinating. No, I'm truly grateful because like the more women I talk to who have kids and have experienced these, I want to say unique, but they're not unique at all, experiences They're really not. You know how many women deal with this? There's so much we need to know that doctors don't tell us, or
No.
our parents don't tell us because nobody told them and they didn't have,
Correct. Your college teacher doesn't
no
tell
one
you.
tells you.
Your
No one
Mashpia
tells you.
doesn't tell you. Your
No.
Rebbitzin doesn't tell you. I'm
No.
telling hello, you are so speaking my language. That's exactly what I'm trying to do here, is because being frum does not mean you're going to have a perfect marriage. Going to the mikveh does not mean that your husband is not going to be doing a line of coke before you get home. No, but like addiction is real. And these are real stories that I've heard from real women in my life. It's not a Band-Aid. It's a tool to connect with our higher power and to serve God in a way that we feel is appropriate. But it's not a fix for people's human experiences.
Yeah.
I'm not resentful at all, but I am shocked that no one talks about stuff.
Yeah, and that's a good distinction. You're not resentful. First of all, you chose this life, so I like that it's coming from you versus somebody who feels like they're just stuck in this lifestyle, because you chose it. You made a choice, but you're also very, very aware there are conversations that no one talks about, and so many people are suffering because it's not talked about.
I'm gonna be completely psychotic when my boys go to yeshiva and their rebbes at 12 years old are giving them vodka. I'm gonna become a crazy person. Like, this is not an appropriate way. Like, hello, we have a generational family addiction. You cannot give my son that, like, this is real. It's real. And I appreciate what you said about that, because my best friend and I were talking, and she's from birth, and I'm obviously not. And that even though I saw the really, really, really dark side of the frum world, I still stayed frum. Like, I did it for Hashem, not for my shluchim, not for communal acceptance, not to be cool or not cool. I think I'm not cool now, but I am still cool. But like, I really did it just because of Hashem. And that's what has kept me frum, even when I've seen the underbelly of it. A lot of Baal Teshuvahs who end up seeing the underbelly of it just totally drop everything.
But that's the thing about life, right? Nothing is black and white. There's always, there's a dark, there's a light, there's a gray, there's.
But when you're becoming frum in the system, you're not even exposed to 1% of the dark.
Wow. Okay, so I'm not going to say you're brave, and I'm not going to say
you can.
But I want to say, I'm just going to say thank you. Thank you for using your voice to share. No, seriously, I mean it. Share your story. You're doing it in such a beautiful, kind way. Truly, and you told me you do public speaking. It's very clear the way you speak and the way you express yourself.
Thank you.
I want to end off with one thing, which is how I end off with all my guests. I want to ask you what being a trailblazer means to you.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so for me, being a trailblazer comes back to that I want to blaze a new trail for my future generations, and I want my kids to see a mom who loves herself and invests in herself, but also is a great mom, so that they can invest in who they are as human beings and not just be a tati, or if I ever have a daughter, which I will not, I'm an ultimate boy mom. So being a trailblazer to me really means breaking these generational cycles that have gone on since the dawn of time in my family, and hopefully raising children who, love themselves and can show up in the world in a really kind way and not in a way that they have to heal from.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Oh, this was so lovely. Thank you so much. I'm so appreciative.